total rebalance patch for Evil Genius 2. Did the developers fix everything they needed to, or do they still need to do some more work? Well, let's get into it. The developers dropped an enormous patch rebalancing pretty much every single system in the game, looking to address feedback that they had been receiving, and they paired this with the release of the Cabal DLC, the very first DLC for the game, containing none other than Espectro, the character that you see right here. If you want to learn more about him, I've got a video that reviews him as well, but this video is just going to be about the changes that came from the current patch. The most common piece of feedback that the developers were receiving was that the game pace for Evil Genius was too slow. I wholeheartedly agree that it's too slow on release. There were plenty of times where I was playing through and I ended up starting up my mobile game to be able to kill time while waiting for something to happen in Evil Genius 2. Well, let's look at how they addressed this issue. The biggest changes come out here on the world map, and they do extend to pretty much all of the other systems in the game, but let's start out here. Whereas before, schemes were kind of divided in a region between a scheme that would give you a lot of money quickly versus a scheme that would only cost a few minions and give you a trickle of money throughout a longer period of time. That's now been standardized. So now all of the money-making schemes out here on the world stage take 1 hour. They require a certain type of minion, and then they actually calculate for you now how much money you're going to be making in a certain amount of time. So this is really nice that they actually do the math for you. It's not so hard for them to be able to show, but it is pretty annoying to have to go back to like a calculator or say, or do the mental arithmetic to be able to decide which is what you had to do before. So with all of those schemes being standardized, what they did is they replaced the scheme that gives you a lot of money very quickly with a brand new type of scheme that only costs intel. Let's see if we can find a prime example, and we do. So this scheme requires no minions, and it gains heat equal to the maximum heat of your criminal network. So it will always max out and lock down the region, and it will give you a ton of money very, very quickly, costing again only intel and only taking 10 seconds. So it happens very fast. It'll max out your criminal network, and it'll just give you that shot of cash in the arm to be able to get your operation up and running. Now, when a region locks down, it no longer fully refreshes the heat in the region. They have it scaled now based on the difficulty that you're playing on. If you're playing on easy mode, it'll still reset all the way down to 0. But if you're playing on medium, which is what I normally play at, then the heat stays at 20% of what the max of the region has, and on hard mode you're up to 30%. So you're going to be seeing more heat in the different regions if you just let them naturally max out and then reset on their own. Because regions no longer reset all the way down to 0 after they get locked out, you're going to have increased levels of heat just across the board. And the developers have made this more meaningful because they lowered the thresholds where you're going to get the advanced agent types. On the old patch, I was getting all the way through campaigns, pretty much only dealing with investigators and sometimes getting waves of soldiers, but pretty much never seeing saboteurs or rogues spawn from just the normal forces of justice. I was only seeing those agent types if I got these super agents that was associated with those agent classes. Now, your heat thresholds for seeing those advanced agent types are much lower. You're going to see them all the time, and let me tell you guys, they mean business. So agents have increased stats overall, and then there's been a couple nerfs to the cover operation to get them to be more meddling in terms of trying to break into your lair. They are set so that they don't try and revisit items very often in the cover operation. They try and take a more direct path to get into the back door here, and overall they're just going to be trying to make it through your cover operation more quickly. Your cover operation is also going to be gummed up with more tourists. Tourists now scale with how late you are in the campaign, so you're going to be seeing more and more of them. This is great because it makes your casino feel just more alive, and feeling that scaling up with the game is really nice. It means that the cover operation is going to be able to make a little bit more money if you are setting a lot of items to be trying to scam the tourists. Whereas before that was never a serious area of income, it could be a little bit more meaningful now. I still think that the amount of money you're going to make off your cover operation is minuscule because of how they have retooled the schemes on the world stage. Your cash flow from just being out here on the world stage is going to be much, much higher. This is partly because the way they have set up the schemes is to try and give you more money, but then also your passive income off of your criminal networks has been increased dramatically. I've got a set of a few examples right here. So now at level 1, you're making $20 every 5 seconds. At level 2, we're making $50 every 5 seconds. And at level 3, we're making $150 every 5 seconds. So this passive income is a lot more meaningful. You're going to be bringing in just a ton more cash. And you might be saying, well, that sounds like they've just made the game a lot easier in terms of being able to get money faster. But what they've done is they have meaningfully increased the amount of money that you have to spend just to be able to upkeep your criminal operation. The advanced minion types always required salary, but now they have really turned up the salary requirements. Minions are asking for more pay, and it is more meaningful if you end up not being able to pay them. They're going to take a huge penalty to morale and start deserting if you miss a payday. And then when they start deserting, they then run into your vault, they take away all the money that they can carry that is there, and then they hoof it out of there. So it can be devastating if you're running on 0 for a while. It means that you can no longer just turn your brain off and plan a huge extension to your lair that's going to deplete your vault and then rely on the trickle of income to end up completing it. You need to plan out manageable extensions that you can complete with the resources that you already have. And so you're going to see that all these numbers are increased. I'm playing as Ivan here, so the guard's salary is decreased just as a passive buff from Ivan. So that is very nice, because otherwise these guys become extremely hard to afford, but they are still so important because you're dealing with those stronger agent types. So your security forces are going to be a huge budget suck now to balance out how much more money you're making from the world stage. Speaking of advanced minion types, they've decreased the training time that it takes to train all of the highest levels of minions. This is pretty much just a quality of life improvement that's really nice across the board. It means that it's not so aggravating to watch your trainees end up having to take a snack break or a nap break in between training sessions and then have another minion jump into the equipment while that previously trained minion takes a different job, and so on and so forth, and it just takes an eternity, especially the quantum chemists. The quantum chemists were just incredibly aggravating to watch their really slow progress in training, and I understand that was I think that was the first stab the developers took at trying to make it harder for you to get those advanced minions, but it just ended up being aggravating rather than strategically interesting. So now you get these advanced minion types a lot faster, and it just feels nicer overall. Somewhat on this topic is that minions now have a much higher priority to getting out to travel the world for schemes that you want to send them out on, and this is just it's another very nice quality of life improvement to see them be a lot more responsive in terms of actually getting out there. Whereas before, if you were looking at schemes out here, it might say that, oh yeah, I have the 3 spin doctors required, so I will launch this scheme. But then you end up going back to your lair, and for some reason your spin doctors are involved in some other job they think is more important than running that scheme, and so then you wait and you watch someone who is currently training, and as they come out of the training room, those are actually the guys who head out on the scheme that is happening way later than when you actually wanted them to leave. So minions train faster, they get out onto the world map faster. Their speed of being able to get out on missions is also increased a little bit because the developers made a change to doors. They make it easier for your minions to get through the doors at whatever level you set here, and a little bit harder for agents to get through doors. So a mild quality of life change there, but it is pretty nice. And then your genius and your henchmen can travel through doors without any impediment at all. Let's see if I can get a good example of that. So we've locked up our door to level 3, which means it should take minions a little while to get through to do that full security check. But when Ivan here wants to head out to his casino, it recognizes him immediately and will open up ahead of him so that he doesn't even have to break his stride to get where he needs to be. And it'll do the exact same thing for your henchmen. Whereas here you see the guard was sitting and waiting for a scan. Okay, minions train faster, they head out of the lair faster. What else has been done to improve the game speed? Well, an enormous change is what they've done to all of the story missions and the side story missions. They've cut the time down to 10 seconds for all of them. Oh, it feels so good. They've also reduced how much heat gain is assigned to all of the story missions, so you don't have to worry as much about maxing out the heat in a region or always having to reset the heat before you run a campaign mission. So that's another nice little quality of life improvement, and it kind of scales with how your regions are always going to have just that little bit of residual heat gain because they don't reset all the way to 0 because of being locked down. So it is pretty satisfying to be able to just head out on the world stage, see a ton of missions. If you have the minion pool already trained up, you can just go bam, 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 knock them all out super quickly and advance to the next stage in the story pretty quickly. And an additional great fix that we see right here is now missions that say hire a particular minion type, so in this case, martial artists in the lair. It used to always start at 0 regardless of how many you had already trained, and so now it takes into account your existing force, adds that in, and then you're just going to have to reach whatever threshold it is. So late on in the campaign, you always had missions like this, and it was incredibly frustrating because it wasn't taking into account your massive pool of existing minions, and then you either had to do executions or run a ton of schemes or whatever, train up a exorbitantly large force of minions to be able to reach the threshold, and then end up micromanaging to reset it down to the level that you actually wanted. The final thing that I want to hit out here on the world stage, well, one of a few final things, I guess, is that they have also retooled the schemes that will reduce heat in regions. So you still have the play where you can spend a bunch of intel and no minions and then reset the heat in a region pretty quickly. They've actually taken away the monetary cost to this, which is really nice. It only costs intel, so it made that a little bit cheaper. And then you can just reset the region just like you used to. That was what I would always do pretty much, is just if I wanted to run schemes there, I would quickly reset it and then run money-making schemes and then rinse and repeat on my favorite regions. Because of how they have scaled heat to the advanced agent types, it's actually important to mix up what kind of heat reduction schemes that you use, and the ones that require minions have been retooled to cover 2 hours. So what they do here is they will slowly reduce the heat in a region. It will not take the full 2 hours to reach 0. It will reach 0 a lot faster. But then once it does, such as in this region, you can just keep on running the scheme even though the region is at 0 for the entire 2-hour duration. You can cancel it if you want to be able to run another scheme there, but I like to just leave it here because as long as it is still running, I'm making this enormous passive income from the criminal network, which would be locked down if it was cut out. So most of my income comes just from the passive gain on these criminal networks, and so I keep a large number of maxed out criminal networks to whatever I have researched. Right now in this campaign, I'm pretty much at 3 all around the world. But if I just let those run without running these heat reduction schemes, I would be hitting waves of soldiers every single few minutes, and it would just deplete my minions. So I run these heat reduction schemes to be able to mitigate the strength of the agents that I am facing, but still be able to make that cushy passive income. Man, shout out to my boy Max, who gets multipliers on your passive income throughout his campaign. He is totally going to be Mr. Moneybags. They've streamlined how you lure super agents out here as well. Now you just click on them and then you have an option, lure target, rather than having a designated scheme that you had to run, and then it would inexplicably take a few minutes to be able to lure them. So it's just really nice that they have this. It costs you nothing. You just, you bait them into a fight, and you get that really responsive option to interact with the super agents. Overall, I'm a big fan of the rebalance that they've done out here on the world map. I love how responsive it is, getting minions out onto the job. They have changed things because they've added in these new scheme types that will either reduce the heat here. The blue are the ones that only cost intel. You will pretty frequently in the new balance of how regions spawn schemes see no money-making scheme in your regions at all. So these two regions together, no money-making scheme. Here we have one money-making scheme in Peru, and then we go up to Central and no money-making scheme again into the Americas. The regions where I'm running the heat reduction schemes aren't going to spawn any. But you do need to spread your networks over a lot more regions to be able to hit the big money-making schemes, because otherwise they just don't spawn with the balance of the new variety of scheme types. They also totally retooled the way that you get fuel for your Doomsday device. They have much faster schemes now. That one just costs money and 10 seconds to be able to get your options. Up here, we're going to spend a few workers in 10 seconds. The kicker is that these schemes never increase the heat in a region. So it's just so easy to go out onto the world stage and say, yes, I want to fuel up, charge up my Doomsday device, bring me all the ammo. And it just is way nicer than before. Whereas before, getting all the minions and the intel and then mitigating the heat was just a headache to be able to go through and gather your fuel for the Doomsday device. Now you can really quickly just pick up exactly what you need. And these schemes, 10,000 for getting a Doomsday fuel is so cheap. It's just a matter of having them enough regions spread out around the world to be able to pick up all that you need. Okay, I think that's finally covering everything that changed out on the world stage. I love that I said that it was the final thing about halfway through my discussion, but there we go. They changed a ton of stuff out there, and I really think that all of the changes on the world stage in particular are really good. I was pretty concerned with their goal of just making the game run faster, that it would feel like it just made the game easier, but I think with their changes to heat and the strength of agents and the general rebalancing that they did out there on the world stage with keeping residual heat even after regions lockdown, managed to make the game run faster without it just feeling easier. I wouldn't necessarily say that it feels harder either, though if you let the heat go out of control and you're hitting all of these advanced agent types early on in the game before you have strong enough minions to be able to combat them, then you're going to feel pretty oppressed. You're going to need to be able to use those schemes to keep heat reduced out there on the world stage, and then when you get the advanced minion types, you kind of finally get ahead of the curve and are able to handle whatever comes at you. Now for some miscellaneous changes. They did some changes to research, particular what they recommend as your very first research project, the project that increased minion capacity. Across the board, the cost of these schemes has been decreased, so it is now way lower than any of the other schemes in their tier. I think this is great because otherwise it was way cheaper just to build a few lockers rather than spend the time and money to do this kind of research. So finally making these research options viable. Along with more tourists coming to your casino, the yacht or the cruise ship that brings them in and out along with the agents now departs a lot quicker, so they just kind of sped up those animations and made it so that it will happen a lot faster, that agents coming via the cruise ship will make it in faster after you trigger whatever causes them to arrive. Another change is the effect of body bags here. So when they get knocked down because of combat, all the minions are gonna, around the body bag, they're gonna have this status effect, body bag losing morale slowly. So they ended up making it so that stacks of body bags are not so punishing to minion morale, that you just get waves of desertions if you've had a huge fight. I think that this change is great. You could kind of mitigate that before by having enough incinerators so that your minions would pick up the body bags quickly, and then also just being intelligent with your combat encounters so that you were using your henchmen and your security forces to really take the brunt of the fighting. But as it is, I really like this change, that you're not so punished by the body bags. What they ended up doing is that it hits their morale less over a longer period of time. So I think that the overall reduction is the same, but the idea is that it gives time for your minions to be able to hit another item that is going to start restoring their morale, so they don't drop all the way down and then desert. While we're talking about combat, they tried to kind of further the differentiation between your guards and your basic minions. So your guards are going to do more damage, take less damage than the basic worker minions, and to scale with the increased guard strength, the agents are also stronger. So now your worker minions are really just cannon fodder. Do not let them get in a big fight because they will be massacred basically regardless of the odds. You really need your security forces to be out there to handle the agents. That's pretty much all of the meaningful changes. They've made easy mode easier and hard mode harder, but they've not touched medium difficulty. Medium difficulty is still going to feel a little bit harder because of hitting those more advanced agents much earlier and much more often. And there's some other changes here, like they provided a lot more descriptions of what these minion traits do, and also kind of tweaked how impactful they are. But if you want to get really into the nitty-gritty of every single change they have, check the description. I've linked the full patch notes so you can see all of those little details. But pretty much everything that I managed to cover is the stuff that you're going to really feel a difference in, and the other stuff is kind of working under the hood and is not super noticeable. One last thing I feel like I have to point out is that they changed the requirements for recruiting Full Metal Jackie. They made it easier so that now if you pick up the starter henchman Eli or Jubei, it will not lock you out of being able to get Full Metal Jackie's quests. At least that's my understanding of how it's working right now. So it's just really nice that they opened up the accessibility there to Full Metal Jackie, so that it's not as punishing just based on what you pulled as a starter henchman. So how good are all of these changes? Well, I think that the changes are really moving the game in the right direction. They do make it faster to progress in the story as long as you have this strong foundational base of training advanced minion types and being able to handle the advanced agent types as well, you're going to be able to hit the world stage and just knock out campaign missions one right after another as long as you have the resources to do so. Having to take on the advanced agent types much earlier on and in greater numbers does make you think a little bit more strategically about combat encounters, especially because those agents have buffed up stats. The waves of soldiers really bring the pain now, guys. They are licensed to destroy, and destroy they do. So you do have to think a little bit more strategically about your combat encounters. I'm not saying that it is crazy hard, but you can't just run the game on autopilot like I was trying to initially when I picked up the patch. I have so much time with the game over the course of 4 previous campaigns that starting up this new one to be able to do the review for Espectro on the new patch, I thought that I could just run through it on autopilot basically, especially with the patch promising to let me progress faster. I wanted to really capture that and try and run on everything on fast forward and just knock it out as fast as possible. But there was enough relearning and strategy adjustments that I needed to make that I was not making very much progress initially until I was really fully engaged with what the new systems were and how I could manage handling the new advanced agent types. I think the bottom line is expect the game to be better, but not be revolutionized. The core gameplay experience is still exactly the same. This was only a balance patch. Do the changes, do enough to warrant saying jump on in, start a new campaign just to be able to see what's changed. If you're coming back just for the balance patch, then I would say it's probably not a big enough update to warrant, coming all the way back for. Because they're releasing it alongside new DLC and they have this roadmap of all this other DLC, it seems like it's probably going to be best just to wait until there's a couple interesting DLC features out and then come back to be able to bring in all the new stuff together. If you have been wanting to start a new campaign with, say, a particular genius that you didn't get to before, then now is a great time to come back because, as I said, progression in the campaign is a little bit faster and there's enough new things to learn that it's going to feel pretty fresh rather than just like a rehash of the first campaign that you did. I do want to pose a warning for people who are jumping in alongside the DLC is that currently the DLC requires you to start a new campaign to be able to play with it. So that means if it is consistent that every single new DLC you're going to have to start a new campaign. So if that stays the case, which right now I don't see a reason that it would change, then I would say only come back when there is enough DLC combined together that you really want to jump in and experience that whole new campaign. Otherwise, if you're just going to do it piecemeal, start a campaign now to be able to see Espectro, and then, in another month, they're going to release another DLC, well, then you're going to be left starting a whole new campaign just to get that fragment of new content. If you're going to come back for the DLC, then my advice is to come back when there is a set of new features together that you want to kind of hit all together on a new playthrough. What are things that they still need to change? Well, for me, I would really like to see a henchman-focused patch that is going to address bugs with the henchmen and rebalance some of the ones that feel like they're just lacking compared to the other characters. I did a full tier list of all the henchmen, and there are just miles of difference between, say, Jubei and then someone like Karl Kafard. Jubei is a one-man security force army who's going to take care of any threat you possibly run into. Meanwhile, Karl, both of his abilities are bugged and he does nothing in combat. So the difference there is just too striking. They really need to patch over some of the abilities, or if they're in some way working as intended, then give us much better tooltips to help us understand how they are supposed to work so that we know the best uses for the different abilities and whatnot. Also, some way that we could find out the requirements for recruiting certain henchmen. I love that they made Full Metal Jackie easier to recruit, but it still stands that they don't publish the explicit requirements within the game itself. And that to me is just unforgivable. We need a way to be able to know if we are locking ourselves out of henchmen or if there is a path that we need to take to be able to pick up these henchmen without going to a third-party source, a forum, or YouTube. The thing is that this change would be incredibly easy because they already have it halfway built into the Rogues Gallery. You get to see all of the henchmen potentially here. They just have it completely locked out until you actually recruit them to be able to get info here. If you had a way that you could complete research projects here to be able to get info on what it takes to recruit them and who they are, or some way out here on the world map to be able to see their avatar as a crime lord in the specific region, and then you could go there and complete a scheme that would inform you as to what they're interested in to know how to recruit them, Those are both ways that they could incorporate giving you, the player, the information about these interesting characters without just taking away the kind of mystery and having it straight up written in the guide without having to put any effort into it at all. Two other change suggestions I have just real quick here, and the first one here is mostly for Ivan, is the dealing with fires in the lair. I feel like right now the system of having minions having to go and pick up fire extinguishers is really clunky, and especially when you have areas such as your vault here, where all of your items are naturally condensed very close together. These fires can get out of hand extremely quickly and just be aggravating to deal with because they're going to take forever for your minions to actually be able to put them out. I would love to see a research option where you get like a sprinkler system for faster fire suppression or some other upgrade. Please let this happen. Maybe how quickly fires spread should be slowed down. Maybe they just shouldn't be allowed to affect the vault items at all. It really needs something to help mitigate how much of a headache it is getting through this. And again, this is most applicable for Ivan. Otherwise, you don't see fires too often unless you're getting the saboteurs. But as it is, this is just kind of brutal. Also, give the stock on the fire extinguisher way higher. Let me just build a few at key points, and then a ton of minions can come and grab these if you're going to only rely on minions to put out fires. Pairing closely to the fires, please, oh please, when items are actually destroyed, give us an option to replace all destroyed items. We get a lovely announcement from Iris that an item has been destroyed, but then you're not told where, and you're not given the option, the immediate prompt, just to instantly replace it with the item that you wanted there. It is baffling that they don't have this, and it would be a huge quality of life improvement for any kind of situation where these items are being destroyed. The saboteurs become such a frustrating agent type because they come in and they blow items up, and then you're left having to find what items were destroyed and put them back manually rather than just having the game have that shadow of an item that was destroyed and then give you a prompt, say replace all destroyed items, so that your minions aren't trying to replace it while a disaster is still going on, but you have that option that it's saved where that item was, what it was, and you can just put it back very quickly. There's the rebalance patch, what was promised, what was delivered, and what still needs to be done. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, comment on a change that maybe I missed that you guys think is really significant, or a change that you want to see come to the game, and subscribe if you want to see more from me. Thank you guys for watching, and have a good one.